Today, today is today is December 16th. In the basement of 916 South Wabash, 1104 South Wabash, in the installation Space. First iteration where I placed the objects or taken the objects out of the studio and began to install them in alternative spaces. First and foremost, I want to give whoop whoop and ashe to those who were, who shall be, and those in the present. So this project, this iteration, this situation that is Temples of My Familiar is evolving. It's a project about space, place, people, ideas, detritus, reconsideration, environment, oddity, obscurity, surrealism, futurism, speculation, mostly. All speculation. There was an adventure, an expedition to my people's land from a time once upon a time, and in the present is no longer lived on. I'm interested in taking that space and spaces like it, taking objects and objects like it, and reconsidering their form, their shape, and their function. Using these objects, these once upon a time materials, to extend a larger narrative, to consider a greater narrative, to consider a greater reconsideration on the narratives that we construct and have obstructed and destruct the way in which we see ourselves in present time and space. What's interesting about time is that it is, it was, and it shall be. It exists in this triune, all immaterial matter, but material. The present is most elusive. The future is speculation. The past, too, is speculation, as with the present. But the three kind of work together in this situation that affords us the opportunity to interrogate and consider and reconsider. Now, the purpose of this project and the purpose of this video really is to just kind of up-to-date and to give an up-to-date woo-woo on the whole thing. Went to go see the Black Film Audio Collective, their film, 7 Songs of Malcolm. These folk. 7 Songs of Malcolm, as well as another piece that kind of spoke to this idea, and Lost Angel of History, that kind of spoke to this idea of the African being an alien, the African in its present context, the African in its past context, and the African of the future context, being an alien to this place that is planet Earth, and using material and materials as a way of reconsidering or considering this African as alien. Spoke a lot about futurism and Afrofuturism and the role of Afrofuturism as a sociological trope of considering or reconsidering the ways in which we navigate our histories, the ways in which we consider our histories and what that means and what that doesn't mean. Music as a conduit, music as existing, music as existed, and music as that has yet to be composed. Sun Ra as being a staple figure, George Clinton as being another staple figure, at pointing at this idea of the African, the brown, pigmented person being something, some other. The film, The Lost Angel of History, also suggests that there exists in time these angels, these historical nomads that kind of wander throughout time and collect relic, that archive sediments of history to unlock the code of life, to unlock this code of time. I'm interested in that idea because at times I feel as if I am a lost angel in history, clearly competent and able to rummage through rotting remains of the past, to place them in the present, to manipulate them that they become future objects. I'm going to go back. Greetings and salutes. I didn't time this, so it shouldn't move. Firstly and foremost, I want to thank you all for this entire process and introducing me to the curriculum of the book and paper side. Second year MA, but more on the digi, and I found my nest cocoon in the pulp and in the book structures and in the print. I'm still getting it. Yeah. But what I want to do is kind of move back and then move forward. Similar to Chelsea, I came with an idea in mind, with some research that I wanted to see how it could be informed by thinking through making. And I'll start with just some background situation. So this is my family. Oh, family. I'm the middle child of 3. Which is a very interesting sort of situation, and this won't become like a Ricky Lake, Jerry Springer thing where I kind of lament on being a middle child. But what's very interesting about that was that my eldest brother, who was there in the black shirt, and my youngest brother, who was there in the white kind of cream shirt, were very rambunctious growing up. So it afforded me the opportunity to be left alone a lot. But what was very interesting about that was that I found a way to kind of be in the eye of the storm when everything was happening, and then also kind of go into the periphery and kind of just witness and watch things from afar. So there's always been this kind of dual presence, passive aggression in the midst of everything. And one thing I was very, very fascinated with as a child, when it came to my brothers, was when they would go to sleep and when my father would go to work, was the rearranging spaces. And I enjoyed moving furniture and mirrors and chairs and rugs and tables. Nothing was safe with me. And kind of destructive, but I also enjoyed witnessing their reaction to my reconsidering space. And so I throw that out there because that's one proclivity I kind of come to TTM with, is environment. I enjoy manipulating environment. As the studio knows, I kind of am in trouble right now. So moving on, this space right here is my lovely Nancy Cakes. Oh, my Nancy Cakes! That is my grandmother. As a child, summer, winter, spring, and fall, during school breaks, I would visit my grandmother. And in the time when I would leave my grandmother, she allowed me to make coffee and learn to make pancakes. So many things were taught while I was there. But it was always very difficult when I left as well, and so we wrote letters back and forth. And that was very, very nostalgic and sentimental and all of these things, and it really connected me with this idea of typography and the importance and the emotional attachment that can come with it. And she taught for 32 years, so her handwriting was crazy and beautiful. So I still have all of the letters. We have them kept at her home in an album. So Grandma introduced me to type. Bam. And so this is my mother. Mom. Love her. She's a Virgo just like me, so we get into it very tough. Go Virgos! Both Virgos in the room. But what was very interesting was shortly before attending Fisk University for undergrad, on my 17th birthday, my mother gave me a journal. And that was the first time that I really began to consider narrative and story. And knowing that, like, wow, if I sit and write some things down, I can combine letter and type with ideas and kind of construct these stories of these narratives. And so that's when I began playwriting and creative short story writing. And so that's where I get the idea or concept of a book. And so those are things that I came with to Columbia, but kind of were left untapped until now. Ever since I was a child, there have been moments where I feel as though the present moment, possibility, however, the future in those visions in my mind seem so real, seem tantalizing and tangible.
put so much emphasis on mouth. Because we are of universe. We are a cell.
Once upon a time, once upon a time, once upon a time, long, long ago, far, far away, just the other day I was searching, seeking, search, seeking, search, seeking, sought, seen, things, saw, seen, saw, searching, seeking, saw, seek. Once upon a time I was searching. Relics, clues leading to the disappearance of a relative near yet far from me, my great-great-grandfather Jack Givens, who shortly after witnessing the birth of his son Solomon went missing. And no one knows how, and no one knows why, and no one knows how or why or where he went. I excite when I hear, read, watch, once lived story poems of emancipation's jubilation, cotton, indigo, and rice, plick, plick, pluck, in burlap sacks full of weebles wobbling about the treacherous bulb. reminds me of my reason, gives possibility on as to how life was simplicity, tightly woven in complexity, because those living then left trails, left traces, left remnants for me to find, to figure out what to do with the now. The cast iron skillet and fried chicken spoke to future, because frying chicken preserves it. Planting seeds and working in agriculture. Seeds from past bloom are planted in the present for a future harvest. Interesting. Music composed of yesteryear with today's technology. I excite when I hear, read, watch once lived story poems of emancipation's jubilation, cotton, indigo, and rice, plick, plick, pluck, in burlap sacks full of weebles wobbling about the treacherous bulb. Reminds me of my reason, gives possibility on as to how life was simplicity, tightly woven in complexity, because those living then left trails, left traces, left remnants for me to find, to figure out what to do with the now. The cast iron skillet and fried chicken spoke to future, because frying chicken preserves it. Planting seeds and working in agriculture. Seeds from past bloom are planted in the present for a future harvest. Interesting. Music composed can be played today with today's and re-recorded for tomorrow. Can be played today and re-recorded for tomorrow. Quilted, quilts, quilted, quilted, quilts, quilts, coded language, quilts, coded pictograms, coded language for future coded pictograms, for future decode. All of these sediments, all of these things, these postures, all of these sediments, all of these things, these postures, these artifacts that have been collected deep over this archaeological excavation, deep. All point to suggest to me that there is some. All point to suggest to me that there is some history to what that there is some possibility to what can be and what is. To what can be, that if we were to take a moment, breathe, that if we were to consider our posture, a moment, breathe, to reconsider our epistemic privilege that history has placed us in, epistemic privilege that history has placed us in, as African people, we can begin to reimagine our context. We can begin to reimagine ourselves. We can begin to reimagine space. We can begin to reimagine place. We can begin to imagine, period, point blank. And so, I've taken this concept of the quilt. I found quilts while on my journey, anthro-archaeological journey, back to Crockett, Texas, East Crockett, Texas, on my family's land, and I took that notion of the quilt, this idea of quilt, as this collage, as this interdisciplinary art form where you take mixed matter and material and you construct it into something whose function is unknown, whose function is predicted, whose function is forecasted, whose function is encrypted in its structure and passed on. Imagine if African artifact, imagine briefly if African artifacts, statue, masks alike were to be activated in the year 3030, that though they are created and constructed of the old world and have passed hands in the new world, what if they are for a future world? What if pieces of puzzles have been planted in the soil seed for us to plow and consider, for future use? This project is about space. This project is about idea. This project is speculating that there is something, that there is a hidden code, a mixed message in the quotes that have been left for us. Despite that history has altered. History has altered the way in which we consider ourselves. That if we take the music of yesteryear, place it in technologies of today, we can forecast and shift things, we can sift things. If we take that same cast iron skillet and use the rosemary and olive oil, we can concoct things. These bottles, vials of now urine will contain potions. Where is our magic? Where did our magic go? Where is our magic? Where is our science? So in this very moment, the project is underway, and all of the things that were sought to seek, all of those ideas and notions are growing. They are growing. They're growing. They are growing. They are growing. They are growing. It was exciting to see my work being received, the energies and ways it was received. Installing and creating spaces of speculation, taking audiences into spaces. These grotesque objects will become satellite dishes to transplant ideas, to excavate stories from the viewer, to elicit ideas, to suggest something different, to argue something new. We must begin to reconsider ourselves in this place that is space. We must begin to reconsider our space and ourselves in it. We must, we must, we must, and will. Temples of my familiar, temples of the unfamiliar, temples of the unknown, temples of my familiar, temples of the familiar, temples of the unknown, temples of my
Three, two, one. Eyes open, wide awake, feeling.